There was a college teacher who asked each of her students to bring a clear plastic sack and a sack of potatoes to school. So a clear sack and a sack of potatoes. She said, for every person you refuse to forgive, I want you to choose a potato, write the name of the person that you don't want to forgive and the date that you refuse to forgive them, and put it in the plastic bag. Some of our bags, as you can imagine, became quite heavy. We were told to carry this bag with us everywhere we went for 1 week, putting it beside our bed at night, on the car seat when driving, next to our desk, at school or at work. The hassle of lugging this thing around made it clear what a weight we were carrying spiritually and how we had to pay attention to it all the time and not forget and keep having it in embarrassing places. Well, naturally, the condition of the potatoes deteriorated to a nasty slime. This was a great metaphor for the price we pay for keeping our pain and heavy negativity. Too often we think of forgiveness as a gift that we give the other person, but it clearly is for ourselves. So the next time you decide you can't forgive someone, ask yourself, isn't your bag already heavy enough? So, I called somebody this morning and said, can you go get me a 10-pound sack of potatoes? And I'm sure that they thought, what in the world are you going to do with those? But I think pictures are very important. So this is 10 pounds of potatoes. So just imagine that each one of these potatoes represents somebody that you didn't want to forgive in your life, and you're still carrying that thing on the inside of you. Well, you know, I'm reasonably strong for a woman my age. I work out and try to take care of myself. But I can guarantee you, even if I had to carry this around with me the whole time that I'm doing this teaching today, I would have one sore arm and probably a sore shoulder, and it would really wear me out and make me tired. So I want to ask you, are you carrying a heavy sack that's full of the burden of bitterness, resentment, and unforgiveness? And think about the fact that you're taking it everywhere that you go. But you know what? Just like I'm going to come over here and drop this on this table, you can drop your sack also. Don't keep carrying something that God wants you to lay down and let Him take care of. Now, Matthew 18:21. Then Peter came to Jesus and asked, Lord, how many times, Lord, am I going to have to forgive this person for doing the same thing? How many times shall I forgive my brother or sister who sins against me? And then Peter had an idea. He said, how about 7? I think that's interesting. Of course, we know 7 is God's perfect number, so this is representative of some things. But I think it's interesting that maybe Peter thought he could handle 7, but he didn't know if he could handle any more than that. You know, sometimes making suggestions to God are almost funny because He's already got a way that things are going to be done if they're going to be done right. And us making suggestions to Him on how they should be done doesn't really help. But Jesus, of course, as always, had a perfect answer. He said, I tell you, not 7 times, but 70 times 7. Now, of course, that would be 490, but those numbers are representative. And so I think the message here is you just keep forgiving, keep forgiving, keep forgiving, keep forgiving. Well, then the question comes up, well, if I just keep that up, won't they think they can just keep doing it to me? Well, you know, forgiving somebody doesn't mean you don't confront them. It doesn't mean that you never sit down and talk about a situation or that you don't explain to them how they're hurting you. But if a person is going to refuse to do any different, the point is especially if this is somebody that you have to be around all the time. I mean, I suppose if somebody keeps hurting you over and over and over, and it's somebody you don't have to be with, then, you know, just don't be with them. But if you have to be with them, then you are doing yourself a favor if you forgive them. Don't let somebody else's bad behavior ruin your life. And the key is when you do forgive someone, then you put them in God's hands, and God says He's our vindicator, and He's the one that will bring our recompense. Let me tell you something. God can do marvelous things in relationships if you'll just let go of the bitterness, the resentment, and the unforgiveness. Then He tells a story, and it's a good story. Therefore, the kingdom of heaven is like a king who wanted to settle accounts with his servants. And as he began the settlement, a man who owed him 10,000 bags of gold was brought to him. Since he was not able to pay. Now, I'm going to stop there just a minute and explain something to you. Normally we would just go past that. I did for years, never thought anything about it. But, my dad sexually abused me and really mistreated me growing up. And I married the first guy that came along because I thought nobody would ever want me, and he ended up cheating on me and just doing all kinds of things. And, so I had a pretty big sack of potatoes on my back by the time I was in my early 20s. And I carried it everywhere that I went. And I kept trying to collect from people that weren't even responsible to pay me. When you're hurt really bad, you feel like, and understandably so, I felt like, well, somebody owes me. You feel like something's been taken from you and that somebody needs to pay you back. Well, we initially try to get the person that hurt us to pay us back by shutting them out of our life or wanting them to apologize or talking bad about them to other people. We try to get people back, and it's pretty much useless because it never works. It only makes you miserable. And so I was trying to make my dad pay, but it got so bad that then after Dave and I got married, and thank God we've been married now 53 years. Isn't that wonderful? Yay. And you can make it that long too if you really want to. I realized that I was trying to make Dave pay for everything my dad did to me and other people who abused me also. I had a bad attitude. Come on, I'm admitting it. If you have a bad attitude, admit it. I had a bad attitude toward men in general. And I had made these inner vows that nobody's ever going to hurt me again, and you can't trust any man. Men are only out for one thing. And there was a lot that God had to deal with me about, but I had to be willing to put down my sack of bitterness and resentment and unforgiveness and let God do what only God can do. And so I want you to realize that you need to stop trying to collect from people who cannot pay you. You see, what my father took from me, my childhood, my innocence, my virginity, a lot of things that he took from me, he had no way to give them back to me. Even if he would have wanted to, he couldn't have given me back my childhood. But God can. God's caused me to have more fun in the older years of my life than what I might have had in the earlier years of my life. So because he could not pay, I want you to get what I'm saying. Whoever it is that you hate and you're trying to collect from, they cannot pay you back. The most they could do is say, I'm sorry. Well, what can they really do beyond that? The master ordered that he and his wife and his children and all that he had be sold to repay the debt. At this, the servant fell on his knees before him. Be patient with me, he begged, and I will pay you back everything. Now listen, the master's servant took pity on him and canceled the debt and let him go. Now, that's what it means to forgive somebody. It's like saying to them, you don't owe me anything